You know, I frequently sit here and think about the way things are going and what could be done to make things more impactful. And to be quite honest, I've been sickened by the recent performance of the secular community. The problem is that many in leadership positions have managed to get themselves bullied or cajoled into this bullshit PC appeasement position by people who are conspicuous in that they proudly label themselves as feminists. Folks who find t-shirts like this offensive enough to reduce them to tears. Folks who think that the abusive use of copyright law to stifle free speech is a valid tactic. Folks who think that fake jewellery and not offending people should be classed as forms of harassment at conventions on a par with physical groping.
We're not asking for anything crazy, just basic rules so that we can say, you know, the sort of thing like making fake jewelry and intentionally offending people is not okay, nor is grabbing someone's ass. That's it. That's all we're asking.
Or take, for instance, the professional victims who went from conference to conference telling people each time that the sexual harassment at those conferences was so bad that they were literally putting their lives on the line merely by turning up.
There's lessons. You can't trust the cops. You can't trust people to believe your story. You can't trust the people who hang out with you at these events. You can't trust the leaders of our community to give a damn.
That it was so dangerous that they had to go around in pairs.
So at the conference, all of the skeptic writers who were there instituted a buddy system in which we always traveled together or with a male escort, and especially when returning to hotel rooms late at night. Even
though, of course, the sexual harassment was so bad that all these poor defenseless women might not even have known they were being sexually harassed unless there was a feminist organisation there that could educate them about just what a horrific social injustice this harassment that they weren't even aware of was.
I want to read one first. It says, I've hung around with atheists and skeptics, and I've never encountered this problem, that being sexism or misogyny. His name is Rick, obviously. I suspect he's flat-chested. That's, you know.
Well, you know, but it's important to remember that there are also women who have hung out in these communities who have never experienced, who would say that they've never experienced sexism. And that's not to say that I'm implying that they're lying. More that I think that there are a lot of things that are part of a misogynist culture or milieu that would go by unnoticed by most women. They went unnoticed by me for most of my 20s.
Or those who suggest with a straight face that there is actually an active debate in the secular community at the moment as to whether women are fuck toys and eye candy for privileged white men or are equal colleagues. Yep, apparently the debate is taking place online in exactly those binary terms with no other positions available. You see, P.Z. Myers said so.
Right now, for instance, the internet community of atheists is racked with these paroxysms of argument over, of all things, the status of women. We're trying to decide whether women are eye candy and fuck toys for the privileged white men, or whether we're colleagues together in this movement. And I would have said some time ago, oh, that's easy, that's settled. We know what the answer is there, right? They're equal partners in this effort. But surprisingly, that debate is going on the internet right now.
Look, I don't know whose bright idea it was to get these guys to talk critical thinking type conferences, but what he's saying here is so outrageously detached from reality.
That debate is going on the internet right now. I guess misogyny is not the sole prerogative of Christian and Islamic fundamentalists. There are also some atheists who feel this way.
It's not even a straw man. It's simply bullshit. It's an outrageous fiction told to conjure up this boogeyman that there's this great faction of the secular community that argues that women are fuck toys and eye candy for privileged white men. Okay, maybe that's unfair. Maybe there is the tiny fraction who think that women are eye candy and fuck toys for privileged white men. Well, now, thanks to the scare tactics and boogeymen that these toxic parasites have conjured up, you now have conferences with harassment policies that look like this. Additionally, exhibitors in the expo hall, sponsors or vendor booths, or similar activities are also subject to the anti-harassment policy. Booth staff, including volunteers, should not wear sexualized clothing, uniforms, costumes, or otherwise create a sexualized environment. What, you mean creating a sexualized environment like this?
If you win the hand, then I would have to submit and have sex with you. You win. I will give you my hotel room number right up. We'll do the sex thing later. Okay, go back to your seat. No, take the cards with you. I got to call you back for the sex part later.
Or maybe like this. Yeah, that's right. The harassment policy is now venturing into telling people what they can and cannot wear at conferences. Sorry, girls. Dresses, jewelry, makeup, that's creating a sexualized environment that promotes gender stereotypes. Gender traitors and sister punishers diminishing and minimizing the experience that their fellow women have suffered at the hands of the patriarchy. I think of the words that those who will want to protect you from this harassment that you're not even aware of would use. Seriously, who would pay money to go to a convention like this? The time away from your job, the travel costs, the hotel costs, the conference costs, simply to be judged by some highly strung and obscenely hypocritical professional victims as to whether their clothes constitute creating a sexualized environment and therefore fall under the harassment policy. But the poisoning doesn't end there. These spanners actually want to redefine what words mean. You know, like atheism used to mean just not accepting there was a god or gods. Well, now it means this.
And when we use science, it answers problems. It resolves questions for us. We should do more of that, I think. So, I propose this, that, atheism is a radical notion. We should live our lives by the principles of reason and evidence. That is, by science.
And, of course, those rational goals are phrased in exactly this same radical notion language that constitutes the false strawman dichotomy that lies at the heart of his feminist dogma. And sure, let Muppets like this have their way, and they wouldn't merely stop with trying to control what you're allowed to wear. They would extend their right to prohibit you from saying things that people might find offensive.
Your right to do something ends the second that what it is you're doing hurts somebody else. It's the original phrasing is you can wave your arms around, but that right stops when you hit somebody in the nose.
I believe your right to swing your fist ends where my fate begins.
Or something along those lines. And you know what? That's actually very true, and that also applies to things like language. Yeah, I can say all manner of words, I have the right to do that. I have the freedom of speech. But my right to do that ends the second that somebody who is affected by those words hears me.
I'm not sure Brockman's out of the woods yet. There are a lot of religious watchdog groups out there, keeping the world safe from the horror of free expression.
For my part, I've watched with despair as these ultra-PC professional victims have slowly dripped poison into what used to be a vibrant and exciting conference scene, such that I really want nothing to do with it. Hell, I've been pining back to the happier days when I actually knew who none of these people were. Look, let me make it simple. I just got back from an experiment where I was surrounded everywhere by sane, competent, rational, able, capable, and intelligent people. And then you come back to the secular community, where you have people like Melody Hensley, that's the executive director of the Center for Inquiry DC, going creationist style, ban happy on people who haven't even mentioned her name yet, because they might say something bad about her someday, and starting flagging campaigns against videos critical of her. Oh, and would you believe it, she labels herself as a feminist too. It's just sickening to see someone from the Center for Inquiry embrace with such relish these silencing tactics, which we've seen creationists use here on YouTube for years to protect their bullshit arguments from criticism. I mean, really, an executive director from the Center for Inquiry running a flagging campaign. Shit, these people would give Scientology a run for their money. Thankfully, these PC bullies really cannot get much purchase on the open forum of free speech. That is, on YouTube, these thin-skinned whiners are an utter non-event.
I don't have a major presence on YouTube.
They're like creationists. Their ideas just cannot compete on an open and fair playing field, and they know it. Stating things like,
the comments at YouTube are a cesspit. They really are.
Indeed, they have to resort to these creationist and pseudoscientist tactics of disabling ratings and comments. Seriously, those who organize the conference scene, get a grip. You do not have to appease the request of every PC whiner. The secular community can achieve great things. but it will never achieve anything while it has poison like this being dripped into its heart.